All right, everybody. Good evening. Hope you guys are doing well. Had a really good show with the Hawk's Nest earlier today. If you weren't there for the live, then definitely watch the VOD. Should be up on the channel by now. If it's not, it'll be up soon. Basically, we went for over 3 hours, and about two of those hours we're talking about the DK Metcalf trade request and all of the assorted fallout from that trade request. So, if you're interested in knowing what we think about it from every possible angle, check that out. We also talked about free agency and the combine. So, go give it a listen, and you'll have a pretty good idea about where we personally stand about basically all the angles. But now that we're near the end of the day, I wanted to go ahead and do a little bit of a roundup about everything that we've heard concerning the DK Metcalf trade. Um, Realistically, this is the biggest thing going on with this team right now. And it's a domino that absolutely needs to fall before we say too much about anything else. And that's the reality of the situation. There's a huge difference between DK Metcalf getting traded and DK Metcalf getting extended. And honestly, also DK Metcalf playing out the last year of his contract. So, realistically, it's hard to speculate too much about anything else. But I want to go over some stuff. The first thing I'm going to go over, John Schneider had a interview on Seattle Sports Radio about not even 2 hours ago, about an hour and a half ago, and he went over some of the things that are going through his mind right now and going over some of the details. Nothing really all that shocking or illuminating. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. It's not like he shed any massive amount of light on the issue, and to be perfectly honest, I don't even know if he would feel comfortable doing so. But let's go over what he said real quick. Schneider said, and by the way, all these tweets are going to be from Dugar here concerning the interview because he was live tweeting it. Everything is in a cordial, professional place after DK Metcalf's trade request. Says Seattle's obligation to the owner and fans is doing what's absolutely best for the organization. Says they're talking to teams and taking offers. So, I mean, it's definitely real. This is definitely real. This isn't something that the national media made up. This isn't something that somebody trying to start something came out and said just to create clicks. It's pretty real, and that's been obvious for a little while now, but it is worth noting. So this is definitely something that can happen at this point. I tend to believe it's more likely than not it happens, but I think there is a very significant percentage of the time where nothing gets done. And we'll talk more about that at the end of the video, but be prepared for anything. So Schneider was asked about the possibility of the trade not going through. Like maybe right now it's like 65-35. What if the 35% happens? Said that DK has been professional and respectful through the process and understands that there's a world where they can't find a deal that satisfies all parties, and he plays for Seattle in 2025. And I hope that's the mentality that Seattle keeps up throughout this. If they can't find the deal they like, they don't just default to the deal of least resistance or something like that, you know? They don't just say, well, we got to just take what we can get. No, there is another option here. You can just say, hey, honor your contract, and if you wanted to get traded for more, you should have played better last year. And the fact that you don't have that high level of trade value says something about you as much as it does about us. So if we can't find the right compensation for you, then to a certain extent it's your fault for not doing more last season. So by the way, this DK Metcalf's not on a rookie deal. DK Metcalf is on an extension that he signed a few years ago. He is making a lot of money. He is making a ton of money. I'm not saying he's overpaid. I don't think that he is, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a right to negotiate an extension. What I am saying is you're not going to catch me feeling too bad for him if he ends up having to play out the last year of his deal or accept an extension with Seattle. So if it goes this way, it goes this way too. Schneider did say one thing that I really don't like, though. He said the draft is the deadline to get a DK trade done if one comes together at all. I really don't agree with that at all. I think the deadline is much sooner than the draft. Free agency is going to start in like 3.5 days. We are a little more than 3.5 days away from a DK Metcalf trade. I'm sorry, free agency. And we need to know what's going on with DK by then. Because whether or not we trade DK Metcalf is going to affect what we do with Geno Smith, what we do with Uchenna Nwosu, what we do with really the whole team, maybe Noah Fant. It's going to affect what we do in free agency. Are we going to go out and sign these guys? Are we not going to go sign these guys? Are we going to keep this guy? Are we going to keep that guy? Like, we need to know where this is going before free agency starts. And that's why the timing on this is so atrocious. And this is why I really wish this had happened last week, honestly. But I don't think we can have the draft being a deadline here. I do agree that there is to a certain extent, a deadline you put on the draft because you need to actually be able to utilize immediate draft picks when you're making a trade like this. But my issue with this is you are going to be uninformed about the circumstances of the team going into free agency. And that's really not okay. So I at least need the team to know what they're going to do. And I'm sorry, if this is still hanging in the air, it's going to be really hard to know what you're going to do. He did comment a little bit on the fact that Metcalf's trade request came right after the Lockett release announcement. And they said that they purposely released Lockett separate from the other 4 releases to make sure he got his moment in the spotlight. So DK completely stepped all over that. And he did say it was very disappointing, and he seemed pretty unhappy about it. I don't know if it was intentional. It could have been an accident. It could have been a lot of different things. I don't know. I don't really I don't really want to pass judgment on any one person or any one entity to say like, oh, that was definitely something that was meant as disrespect or trying to get attention or something like that. But it doesn't really matter why it happened. It just matters that it happened at the end of the day. So I don't, I'm not going to say too much about it other than that. It does suck. But the important part is what happens now. So that was basically everything Schneider said about Metcalf. He did have a couple comments about Ernest Jones, so you can listen to the full interview if you want to know that. But again, Metcalf is the focus of our conversations right now as Seahawks fans. So let's look at a few different things. Some information came out earlier today. I think the main thing that caught my attention earlier today was from a Rossini, and I would have liked to have made a video about this earlier this morning, but I didn't have the time for it before the stream of the Hawk's Nest. So, first thing that she says, which is great, the Seahawks are seeking a first and third round pick for wide receiver DK Metcalf. So, first of all, that's a notable haul, and that is roughly in line with what I would be hoping that the Seahawks can get here. That is roughly what I think they should be looking for, and if they can't get it or something very, very close to it, then I think they need to be willing to say, you know what, we're not going to do this. DK, sorry, suck it up. And we're not moving you right now. So you look at other star receivers in recent years that have been traded, guys like A.J. Brown, guys like Odell. Odell actually went for more than that. Guys like, who was the other guy? God, I can't remember his name. But there's been a slew of receivers, like big-time receivers like Metcalf, that have been traded in recent years that have gone for about this much or even a little bit more. So there you go. And this is notable, first of all, because there have been some people out there, some entities that are saying, oh, he's worth a third-round pick. You guys have never seen me mad, but you will see me mad if we actually did something like that, when you can get a third-round pick in a compensatory pick if you let him walk next season. So, first of all, to anybody out there who's actually trying to trade a third-round pick for DK Metcalf or something like that, I hope that John Schneider blocks your number if you come swinging in here with that. So, get out of here with that. This is a very good player. He is a flawed player. He's not coming off his best season, but the price is the price, and I hope the Seahawks are willing to hold firm on this. They need to get something back that is real, or else they're not doing it. And that's good, at least. They're in a position with some leverage. This is not a he has to go or he's going to set the VMAC on fire in April type thing. This is a situation where we can make sure the situation is appropriate before we actually make the move. Also of note, no mention of a veteran receiver, which a lot of people thought would be part of a DK Metcalf trade. And I'm not saying that can't happen, but it does seem to indicate the team is prioritizing draft picks over players that might be proven as fairly decent prospects. You know, somebody like a Keon Coleman or a Quentin Johnston, those would be like former high picks that have been disappointments so far. Guys like, one of the Packers receivers, or these guys that are decent but not necessarily anything special, or guys that have potential to be special but have been disappointments so far. Rashad Bateman would be another one, I guess. No mention of anything like that. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but it is interesting, I guess. Now, the other thing that's interesting in this tweet from Rossini, Metcalf is eyeing a contract worth around $30 million per year. So I am going to go ahead and admit to this. Likely what happened is the Seahawks lowballed with their initial offer, because I was theorizing that maybe Metcalf wanted $35 million a year, or at least 33, and we were like, we can't do that. And that's why Metcalf requested this trade. If this number is accurate and Metcalf just wants $30 million a year, that's actually pretty fair. And when you take a look at the way NFL contracts work, when you take a look at the way contract escalation works, and you take a look at how the escalation goes, where it doesn't necessarily follow some super hard, super strict hierarchy of this player versus that player, and this player is a little better than that player, so therefore the player gets a little bit more. It's just a matter of who is next up. This is fair. Now, you can construct an argument that paying a player like Metcalf $30 million per year is not a good business decision, but this is in line with what I expected, $30 million per year for a new contract. So if Metcalf wants that, and they're so far away from each other, Schneider and Metcalf, that he feels like he needs to ask for a trade, then the Seahawks tried to lowball him, and he's not having it. Maybe they tried to offer like 25, and he's like, we're too far away. We're not going to be able to meet in the middle here, or I'm going to force us to meet somewhere more in line with what I'm expecting by requesting this trade. So I'll say that. We probably swung in there with a lowball offer, and that's why this is happening. If this number is accurate, then I gotta give credit where credit's due. That's actually a pretty fair number for where DK is right now. And I know somebody's gonna say, well, he's not a top 20 receiver, so therefore he should be getting paid 21st among all NFL receivers. That's not how it works. Okay, that's not how it works. Either you're next up to get paid or you're not, and it doesn't follow this perfectly linear progression of payment. That's not how this works. Now, according to Corbin Smith here, the best offer that the Seahawks have gotten so far is from the Packers. By the way, I have my doubts about DK Metcalf wanting to go to Green Bay, but I could be wrong. So the trade as proposed is Metcalf and a 5th-round pick, or a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick, and Dontavian Wicks. So you could kind of sort of wipe away the 5th-round pick and wipe away Wicks and just say Metcalf for a 2nd and 4th. They're not very good seconds. It's not a very good 2nd, right? It's 55. That's a bad 2nd. So if this is the best that the NFL can do to get Metcalf, this tells me there's a pretty good chance he's not going anywhere, honestly. This is far away from what the Seahawks are looking for, and I think the Seahawks feel like they can just sit on him and try to get a deal done later, or just let him play out the last year of his deal and see what's up in 2026. This is pretty far away from what we're looking for. I think Dontavian Wicks is relatively negligible. I think that, again, him and the 5th-round pick more or less cancel each other out. So you're really talking about Metcalf for a relatively late 2nd and a, I guess, relatively late 4th. Not that the area of the 4th-round pick really matters. That is not particularly close to what the Seahawks seem to be looking for here. So this needs to go up significantly, or I'm actually believing that there's a real chance Metcalf sticks here for 2025. Now, there are other teams that are going to get involved here. Not only the usual suspects, teams like the Packers, but you've also got the Bills, you've got the Chiefs. I'm sure those teams are going to be at least poking around. There have been rumors that teams like the Raiders, obviously, the Panthers, I heard about, some other lesser teams, a team like the Browns. Now, New England, DK needs to be willing to sign an extension with those teams. He might not be willing to do an extension with those teams. If not, then that obviously limits things a little bit. But we need other teams to come in with offers better than this to start driving the price up. And I think that still has a better than 50% chance of happening, I will admit. But I do think there is significant room here for nobody rising to meet the asking price for Metcalf. If we want a first and a third, I can't think of a good reason to suddenly change our mind and say, you know what, we'll actually take a second and fourth, when the second and fourth aren't even very good. So this does kind of eliminate a distinct possibility. This Corbin Smith proposal that he's written out here on his site. What's it called? Emerald Spectrum. I know he recently kind of went independent. It tells you there is a little bit of a divide here between what the Seahawks want and what they're what's currently being put on the table in front of them. Now, again, you're going to see these offers go up in the coming days. But as we go through free agency, the offers could go down because teams are spending their money and committing roster spots to players as the days go by. Like, what if the Packers are wanting to trade for DK Metcalf and then they get to free agency and they have a chance to sign somebody like Amari Cooper? Then they're not really going to want to trade for DK Metcalf that much. Maybe they can't really. So there is some urgency here, but I do not want that urgency to turn into something where we feel like we have to take less to trade him. Okay? I just don't. Look at what Stephon Diggs went for. Diggs is actually another good example of a recently traded receiver that still got first round plus. Guys like Stephon Diggs, guys like A.J. Brown, guys like Odell. Actually, going back to Odell, he went for 2 first round picks. Now, Odell was in a better place value-wise than Metcalf is right now, but regardless, point is, get what the player is worth. The price is the price. You got to stand on that. All right, so that's everything as I see it right now. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. And, yep, more videos tomorrow, but resolve this situation quickly so we can move on with the rest of the offseason.